Communications and Membership at Bond. And we're here delivering another webinar in conjunction with MZN International, who've been doing some fantastic work since March with us on supporting our members through COVID and other funding crises and various other matters that are relevant to organisational development and beyond. We're delighted to be working with them again today on looking at philanthropic partnerships in various forms. Just to say, we'll be recording the session and we'll make slides available to all participants. There's be a presentation for about 20-25 minutes and then opportunity to ask questions at the end. If you can make sure to put your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, that's the place to do it, not the chat box, and then we can handle those questions as they come through. And I'll now hand over to Chris and I'll let him do the introductions for his panel. But good to see you all, and over to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Mike. I really appreciate it. Hello, everybody. I hope you're well. I hope you have been already or about to go on a week's holiday. Also, this year's holiday season needn't be cancelled just because of a small thing called COVID or Brexit. My name is Christian Mayer-Natrup. I run founder of MZN International, where we do organizational development and funding advisory for nonprofits and SDG streamlining for corporates. With me today is a good friend, employee of a client of ours, and formerly UNICEF, Robert. Robert is dialing in under severe circumstances from powerless, literally powerless, no electricity, northern greater New York area. Robert, do you just want to say hello and say a few words about your background?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Chris, and thank you, Mike, for letting me join this webinar. So as Chris said, I'm calling in from, or dialing in from New York City. We've just had believe it or not, a tropical storm here that left some extensive damage that really hasn't made the news beyond our regional area, but it's knocked out a lot of power. Trees down, roads closed, and obviously my community is one of those. So I've got a glaring LED in my face that I've got plugged up to a battery here. But in a nutshell, my background has been primarily in fundraising my whole life, over 3 decades, majority of it in international development for UNICEF, then Save the Children, and the United Nations Association. So I'm happy to be a part of this conversation today and hopefully bring some insights and learnings and best practices to partnership development and how we did it at UNICEF successfully, and then be able to answer some of your questions if you have any.
Thanks, Robert. I mean, your UNICEF experience, when you talked to me about that a good 6 months ago, really speaks to today's topic, and I look forward to hearing about that. We're talking today about partnerships. And in just a few quick clarification, partnerships here means obviously partnerships with any institution or organization that would like to partner with a nonprofit, for example, or a trust-based organization. That includes the traditional, what you would associate philanthropists, a wealthy top 10% person or 1% who would like to make the world a slightly better place, and far more common corporate partnerships as well. So both we sum up here under philanthropic partnerships. And we're talking about the essential considerations when we are starting, or many of us are also restarting our partnership scheme, and how to attract it, how we actually can deepen the partnership, and then we do a Q&A. And we will wrap that up in around 8 or 9 slides, hopefully focusing far more on the discussion, the Q&A, than on the concept. And the idea is for me to present sort of 3-4 incomplete by necessity concepts about starting, deepening, and valuing the partnership, and then let that come to life through Robert's very varied history with this topic. Right, so kicking it off, before we start, let's be really clear about it. I've seen it time and again, NGOs come to us, say, hey, can you develop and co-develop with us a partnership scheme? And then we come to the first meeting and a lot of clarity and consensus that should be there isn't there. So before we even start, I strongly recommend to get internal clarity and consensus about these key considerations. And there are more than those, but just to highlight that, the number one is, what is your target area and your user? User is a term you might describe it as beneficiary. We're using the term user. What demographic profile do your users have? Who are they? Where are they? And what is your scaling need to reach them? You can think of many examples there, but you need to be really clear on who, where, and how do we reach them. What's the road to the user before we even start thinking about a partnership. Now, secondly, I think you need to be really, really clear about what impact we deliver for the partners. Do you obviously do aid delivery and development progress so we achieve a social goal? That's fantastic for the users of that program. Or you might also, and that in itself, is a key consideration, a key motivator for any partner to join you. Other motivations for that partner, that corporate partner, that philanthropic partner to join you might be actually data information from primary sources. We've seen, and we just set up a MasterCard Foundation partnership where they actually want to gain first-hand data of what are your beneficiaries, what might be their future customers. And that is a viable partnership. And finally, we're getting more and more corporate companies who approach MZN saying, we would like to partner with an NGO because our customers demand it and our employees want it. You know, we want to be a force for good. And that is not our business, but it's clearly the charity's business. That's the language with which they approach us. So that is something where you can deliver real impact into the partnership. And secondly, obviously, it's not about you just giving a partnership, giving it all. You also should be very clear about what you actually need. Do you just need access to ideas, which is very valuable, people, or technology? Again, Google partnerships could be both. We have just established a partnership between a Swiss NGO and L'Oreal, and they wanted access to their delivery supply chain. That was the main reason across which they can now implement programs. Would you like expertise from them in logistics, as I said, supply chain, L'Oreal, IT, like from Google, for example, or from many other companies, SAP, we've just done one as well late last year, or finance. You know, do you need financial skills? Partnerships there are very useful with, for example, management consultancies or accountancies. And finally, I think the one that is in all our minds, you may want funding. But even then, I think you need to be very clear about what type, what amount, and what frequency you would like. And before we are clear about these and a few other considerations, I think we need to be really clear on this one. Before we aren't, it's not worth even starting out. I don't know about you, Robert, but I have experienced many conversations where this was the first milestone to bridge after a couple of weeks of conversation. Did you have a similar experience around that at UNICEF, or how did you overcome, or did you have any other questions on that might be useful to consider?
Yeah, so thank you, Chris. And I think this is a great overview of the types of considerations that are really critical when you're looking at forming a partnership that's going to have impact and scale. So I call it sustainability and scalability. And these two things are critical elements in looking at partnership development in any area. And obviously you have to do your research, your homework. You have to have someone that can help facilitate and execute on that partnership development and action plan. And you certainly have to have all the elements that's listed here on this slide, not the least of which is resource mobilization. So without having identified those individuals and institutions and programs that can feed into that partnership, it's going to be a challenge at the beginning. So for me, I would say, yes, follow this outline, and then certainly I could give you an example of how we did that a little bit later if you have some additional slides, Chris.
Yeah, great. Great. I would love to hear about this. And maybe also from your experience at UNICEF, I just personally wonder if all that was clear when you arrived. But we can talk about that maybe in the Q&A. Sort of next step would be, great, we have all that, or we've gone through a process. Shouldn't take more than 2-3 weeks to keep the momentum really. Now we really need to identify the partner, the ideal partner. And that's a little bit like speed dating. I don't know, I've been married for 15 years, but they tell me that people consider, what do I really need from this partnership? And I think like that, a good partnership really starts with identifying the right partner. We know we're never going to find the perfect one, but the closer they get, the better. And here are then some of the questions that you may want to consider. Can we propose a partnership that benefits both? If you struggle to identify the partner's benefit, that makes negotiations later so much harder. Might not even get off the ground. If you can't identify your own organization's benefit, stop there. Is a partnership aligned with both partner strategies? I think that's a really critical question. Ask yourself, please, okay, this may benefit us both now, but knowing where you want to go, does it benefit you in 4 years' time, 5 years' time? Because the amount of work involved in setting up a philanthropic partnership and or a corporate partnership, and they're increasingly merging, is really laborious. It's even expensive. So we don't want to do it for 1 or 2 years. And I think Robert was quite instrumental in setting that up at UNICEF, of the scalability not just in size, but also along the timeline. The very easy one is, and you could start with this one, do both. You and the identified partners have a complementary concern, a social problem that you both care deeply about. If you go, for example, to Patagonia's website, you clearly see what they care about. You can clearly see their concern, their target area. Is that actually complementary to any of the programs you do? Or any geographic areas, any key program users? Are any of their key customers and or employees part of your program users, the beneficiaries? If that is, there may be a natural overlap here already. And do any of these existing programs you already have match with each other's activities? For example, if you work a lot in the Bangladeshi garment industry, you might very well have a common concern there with Patagonia, for example. Now, that's a simple example, but here's a tip. Try to design your PPP, your philanthropic partner profile, sort of your ideal partner to your organization with all the key characteristics involved. So literally picture her or him or the organization in their beliefs, in their values, in their passions, connected to, if it's an individual, to their life experience. If the founder of the organization is still alive and around, connected with their life experiences, cause that they care about. For a company, that maybe their markets, their employees, their technology privileges, their critical assets. For philanthropists, this might be family connections. This might be illnesses, concerns, travel targets, second homes in locations where they really, really are spending more time, markets in which they're active. Think about their supply chain and or investment chain that touch on your program users. If the company, again, use another example, is active in northern Nigeria, they have a lot, you may have beneficiaries, you may have programs in that area or targeting that area. There, your program targets and their supply chain are matching. And on the philanthropist, the last thing I want to use before maybe Robert can tell me where I got wrong here, is most philanthropists I speak to, they have been or are at some point in their life investors. And that takes a certain, it's very hard to become rich without investing. And that takes a certain thinking around it. And I have seen it time and time again, and I can't quite quantify it, but they carry that investor's thinking into their philanthropic activity. So ask yourself about their investment chain. Where do their investments come from? Are these investments ESG conform? Are they good? Do they maybe want to balance out some of their investments? Do they maybe say, well, if I make a return or if I have lots of funds invested in that area, that's maybe where I should do something for the people or the country or the society in that area. So my tip, design your perfect partner as if you could reach anybody. Robert, would that be a good starting point? Or do you have any other sort of ideas how to sort of identify the real partner, the ideal partner?
No, thank you, Chris. And yeah, no, this is a great tee up to maybe an example I'll spend a few minutes sharing with our viewers today. I did, however, want to speak specifically to this slide because I think it's so important when you're creating a partnership, an ideal partnership, in fact, to do the research. You know, I've, as I said, I've been in the nonprofit area for a long time. And I consider that the foundational belief to all successful partnerships is developing the right relationships individually and certainly corporately with those people and programs and corporations that you feel have matching ideals or visions. And for me, while you can go out and maybe already have one or two of those kinds of relationships and say, you know, let's do this program or let's create this partnership. That research, that developing that profile is so important because you'll find in doing this, what I call prospect research, the ability to define some of the parameters of that partnership even before you lay out what the goals of that partnership are, because there'll be limitations in terms of resources, in terms of geography, in terms of manpower, in terms of impact. So this is an important step. It might seem, you know, I've got that, but in all truth, it's something that you should have a serious conversation about with your internal stakeholders, and then identify the external stakeholders that can help you create that partnership. So with that sort of as a frame, what I had mentioned to Chris that I could do, if you want me to, Chris, now is to go into my example at UNICEF with Schools for Africa.
We're flowing. Let's go for it. I'm keen to hear it. Okay.
So as I said, I used to work at UNICEF. I was the head of the UNICEF USA National Committee, and UNICEF is organized around these national committees in 36 countries, where we basically are independent nonprofits that are the fundraising arms of UNICEF, the UN agency. Since the UN can't raise money directly except receive volunteer contributions from governments, they set up these national committees. And I was in charge of the US committee, one of the larger national committees. And we had a big, bold vision. We had 8 national committees that came together and said, we want to address a significant issue in the world today. And that is the exclusion of educational opportunities for school-age children in sub-Saharan Africa. And we identified 8 countries in which there were approximately 8 million kids that literally did not have access to an educational experience for lack of a school, for lack of a trained teacher, for lack of school furniture, for lack of the ability to have a meal that would encourage them to stay in school so that they would have the nourishment they needed to be able to study. I mean, it sounds simple, but it was something that was profound in terms of what we were planning to do. So with this bold vision, we knew that we had to fundraise significant amounts. In fact, our initial goal was $50 million over a 5-year period, so $10 million a year. We knew that we needed a couple of partners to create a partnership to draw in what I would call the additional corporations and individual philanthropists and foundations that we didn't have access to within our national committee structure. So what we did, and Chris, you would be interested in this, we went to a German industrialist. His name at the time was Peter Kramer, and he was associated with the Hamburg Society. And we approached, in fact, UNICEF Germany National Committee approached Peter and said, we have this bold vision. We would like for you to be a part of this vision. We want to partner with you, and obviously we'd like to have your resources help us achieve our goals. So after a number of conversations and meetings, Peter gave a $5 million gift to UNICEF Germany to launch the Schools for Africa program. At that time, it was one of the largest gifts to UNICEF in the history of the organization from an individual.
So what I found...
Yes, sir.
Robert, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but what I find really noteworthy here, just to make sure that we are really taking that in, is at the very outset, you seem to be very specific about your location, your markets, your users. You had 8 million kids in these locations. You knew your specific fundraising target, and you even knew your road to market, in which case the road to the funders via Peter was his name.
Exactly, Chris. We had enough there, so to speak, a plan, an action plan that we could take that to Peter and engage him with a value proposition.
Right.
That we would like to achieve this goal in the next 10 years to build child-friendly schools in sub-Saharan Africa in 8 countries, and we're going to raise $50 million, and we need a seed gift of $5 million or 10% to get started.
Good.
Peter obviously had a lot of questions, but we had the answers at that point, which was important to your point, Chris, about developing the framework for your partnership and then identifying individuals that you could share that framework with in a compelling way.
Yeah, thank you very much, Robert. That you just exactly brought to life the point that I see. We have lots of our NGO partners coming to us and say, we would like to fundraise from corporate or wealthy philanthropists. And when we ask, well, how much and for what, they say, well, for our programs and as much as we can. And it takes some explaining to say, well, you know, that does not sound like a good investment. You know, they want what you just you go to a partner. I mean, you even identified the route to market, very essential. We haven't talked about that here extensively, but it's very, very clear that we need to be very clear before we have the first conversation.
Exactly. I mean, you have to have, you know, as they say, all your T's crossed and your I's dotted in what you want to achieve when you go to a potential partner like Peter or a corporation or, you know, a private foundation. Interestingly, Chris, and to our viewers, Peter had a condition for his gift, which is not unusual for, you know, larger potential partners to come and say, whether it's the Gates Foundation or Peter Kramer or whomever, or a corporation, typically they're not going to say yes unconditionally. They're going to want something out of this as well, but something to achieve that goal either faster, quicker, or better, because at that point they're bought in. And for Peter, the condition to UNICEF was this. He said, I'll put $5 million on the line if you match that $5 million with another partner. Now, he didn't say go out and fundraise, you know, in your respective national committee countries from, you know, hundreds or thousands of donors. He said, I want another person to put their money on the line at the same level that I have. I want to see that I can leverage my gift by doubling the amount that you're saying we need to start this project. So we had a challenge, and interestingly, that ended up being an opportunity for us to go to the Nelson Mandela Foundation in South Africa, and their mission was obviously within the realm of what we were trying to achieve. We did not have a partnership with the Nelson Mandela Foundation before this. However, with our plan that was carefully crafted, with a seed gift from Peter, and with some significant stakeholders, we went to the Nelson Mandela Foundation and we made this compelling case for support. And they agreed to not match in the amount, but match in terms of the technical expertise, access, and influence, which would have been valued at more than $5 million. The ability to work in the countries to utilize the resources and influence of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and obviously engage governments to become partners with us.
So there you have it. It never goes to plan, but you've created clearly an alliance for school building there. And that brings me neatly on to the next part. Peter Kramer clearly values his contribution, in this case at 5 million, but he wanted a partner. And it's not just about the person who you partner with, but it's also about yourself who has to value your services. That's really important. Now, I think I'm going to make it very simple. You're the most important people, our people dialing into this webinar. You are supporting a cause that requires support. That's just a simple thing. But you're also delivering a service that is incredibly valuable, not just to the direct users, but also to the donors, also to your partners. And you ought to really price it right. And again, I would strongly recommend that we are very clear for what are we asking for. Make sure that you have a minimum partnership level. If they come around, if Peter Kramer would have come around, Robert, with $250,000 US, you would have probably said, you know what, just keep it. And that's not the sort of level of partnership we like. I see many organizations who still come in a sort of subservient or sort of underselling mood to this, saying, oh, we'll just be grateful for pretty much anything we're gonna get. That is not the point. You are delivering a service that is incredibly useful, and underselling that value devalues the whole partnership. The partnership with Peter Kramer and other examples, Robert, I'm sure it had, and very briefly maybe, I'm sure it had stipulations not just from Peter Kramer, but also on UNICEF to Peter Kramer. I assume, for example, and I generally don't know, so please do tell me, that UNICEF would not have accepted 95% of this money to be restricted of some sort.
No, you're exactly right. And in fact, you bring up a really important point that I think supports and reinforces all of these words of advice that you're sharing around partnership development. And that is, to be specific, you have to create what I call an MOU, a memorandum of understanding with your partner or partners that lays out specifically what each is bringing to the table, what each will deliver, and what how each will be accountable to each other. And I think in these partnerships, that's such an important part of this process, is to make sure that you put it in writing, not just a handshake or a verbal agreement, as well as you might know your partner in this process, your program partner. But I think you have to create really a memorandum of understanding in a way that everybody knows what each other is doing and holding each other accountable for this.
Yeah, completely right. And be prepared to walk away. Your partnership comes at a price, your services are valuable, your time is equally and if not more so valuable. If they come around and do not value that with the proper donation, with the proper skill or time preparedness, then we've got the wrong partner.
Yeah, I would say that it's just as important to know when to say no to a partnership as it is to accept a partner and to move forward with a bold vision that requires other individuals and organizations' help and support. Because if you end up moving forward with that partner that's just not the right fit, or doesn't have the resources or influence that you need to get that job done, then you might not know that 3 months in or 6 months in, but you'll eventually see that there's some deficits, maybe even a trust deficit that you'll have to overcome. And that's going to be a significant challenge for your team, maybe for you personally. to be able to work through.
Yeah, been there. Thank you. Okay, last but not least, let's say we have our ducks in a row, we have our T's crossed, our I's dotted. We have identified the ideal partner and we valued our service provider. We have established some sort of partnership. Let's stay with Peter Kramer as an example, for example. How do we actually deepen this? And you do want to, once established, deepen the relationship, deepen the philanthropic partnership as well. And for philanthropists, that is fairly straightforward. Again, let's consider the original motivation of the philanthropist to partner with you. They may want to connect their life experience with your program profile. They may want to extend or reach the impact of the existing philanthropy. That is a good hook, saying we're doing something, we can actually extend or get more buck for our money, or dollar, so to speak. You can deepen and continue to evolve your philanthropic partnership motif, where you say, look, we're going to set up some clear metrics, returns in life, the return of that investment in philanthropic funding and time or access or all of this is a return in lives saved, lives improved, and or lives empowered. You know, if you said, don't be afraid to have clear metrics there, even if they are qualitative in nature. And obviously, many philanthropists have the wish to mingle and to cooperate and to leverage with each other. Very often, they're the kind of people that do business with anyway. So the idea to introduce one philanthropist to the next philanthropist is quite a tempting hook. It's quite a tempting organization. In fact, entire organizations have been built on that concept of joining and pooling philanthropists, and more are springing up by the day. Interestingly enough, in my home region, northern Germany and Denmark and the Nordics, we are seeing the second generation of philanthropists starting to turn 40, 35 right now, and they're doing it very differently from their parents who started a small scheme. They're far more international, they're far more system concerned, and they're far more digital. So they are happy to say, look, as long as I can connect with a pool of other philanthropists in some digital manner, then that is my daily connect that I really want. But obviously, your philanthropic partners aren't just wealthy individuals or trust funds, they're also corporates. In fact, they are far more likely to be corporates. And corporate partnerships are multifaceted as well, and here you can deepen your relationship as well. Here's a few examples. You can deepen a corporate partnership by improving or deepening the staff engagement. You know, with program results that results in more motivated staff. Ask staff to contribute to your organization via a giving scheme that may or may not be matched by the organization. Ask the organization that can volunteer at your programs, either domestic, international, or digital, or they can just join the movement in whatever it is you do. That has multiple benefits. To you, you get time, extra volunteers, extra funding, and to the company as well. They can partner with their staff on a whole new level, not just as an employee-employer relationship. Again, gaining the right talent is absolutely vital nowadays, and employees, not just the much quoted millennials, but all employees mostly want to work for a company that cares, that does good in the world, that wants to make the world a better place. So there again, try to introduce your partnership into the recruitment process. That is essential for the knowledge-heavy corporates, particularly from the IT, advisory, finance, and international logistics, as well as international politics and diplomacy world. Absolutely essential. In fact, my sister just applied for a company. She's 30 years old, so it definitely belongs to the millennials. And the deciding factor for her not to go to one of the companies but the other one was their NGO partnership. Also bear in mind that your partnership may actually support the business plan by aligning with their strategy. I mentioned MasterCard earlier, who is now partnering, get information from financial users in Syria. Those users will become MasterCard customers at some point. They also want to provide access and information to their MasterCard services, and they want to achieve the common goal of financial inclusion, particular at the usually financially excluded, particular at women and households headed by children. So there is actually a very sensible business plan that overlaps with your charity plan, and that can be a very powerful alliance. Needless to say, it improves customer loyalty, it cultivates goodwill, and it humanizes the brand, as well as the simple fact that many companies do more and more want to be a positive change in the world and see that their business isn't sustainable, maintainable, can't be growing without being them. Again, from my home city, hometown here, I would say, ask you all the questions, would you buy a Volkswagen these days? Probably not, given all the scandal.
Chris, if I could just add one point to that, because I think this is...
It was just to go over to you now, so go ahead.
Okay, well, I was going to say, I love this corporate partner checklist because I do think it represents what I call a holistic corporate engagement strategy that you should consider in looking at potential corporate partners for achievement of your vision or your plan or program. And one of the things that I would urge you to incorporate into this checklist is that ability for these organizations to provide technical or in-kind support to your project. We had, in fact, we had a number of corporate partners with the Schools for Africa, but in a separate partnership with UPS, we needed to their supply chain logistics expertise to reach that what we called that fifth child, or that last mile of vaccines in these remote areas in the developing world. We couldn't do that alone. We needed UPS, and UPS came to us and said, we have the best supply chain logistics program in the world from a corporate perspective. We want to share that expertise with you. And we valued that. It wasn't a philanthropic gift. It was a partnership that allowed us to literally vaccinate 20% of the children that we couldn't reach otherwise. And UPS felt that this was a significant opportunity for them, for their clients, for their corporate social responsibility vision and goals. And it was just a sort of a win-win for us. So that technical support and in-kind expertise should be highly valued at the same level as all of these other things that you've already mentioned.
Super. Thank you so much. That's really, really interesting. You're absolutely right. I'll add that to the list for the next one and our internal checklist as well. Thanks for that, Robert. Right, that's it. I promised to keep it short. We said 40 minutes presentation. We are 2 minutes under. Very happy. Let's move on to the questions that you may have. And just to say, of course, that this webinar will be repeated on the 14th of August as a small webinar. And obviously, you can check out Bond's support during the COVID-19 page there. The link is there as well on the page. And you can click that once the slides will be shared by Lena, I believe.
Thanks so much, Chris and Robert. If I may, I would like to ask my own question first, which is a cultural one. So, I mean, I thought that was really fascinating about the need to get into sort of the investor mindset to meet their thoughts about the way they think of themselves with you in a similar way, and to match that if you're going to have some traction with them, to be confident about what you're doing, to be confident about your value. I mean, NGOs aren't particularly used to that, and is there a sense in which there's a danger in which the sort of partnerships work can be isolated within an NGO, and the culture of partnerships can be different from the rest of the organization? And how do you get that, I don't know what your experience is, Robert, how do you get that sort of internal buy-in? And I speak from some experience of a bit of corporate partnership work at Bond, where, you know, there are lots of kind of questions about not just due diligence and sort of the ethical appropriateness, but just, you know, it's a different way of working, it's a different language. How do you get that buy-in?
Yeah, you mean with your NGO team?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
A larger team? Yes, that's a great question, Mike. And for us, one of the things that we did is that we would go on these planning retreats every year, and we'd identify those partnerships that we would like to create. We would identify squads that would work on these partnerships. Again, if they were corporate partnerships, we had our corporate team working on it. And you're right, they're sort of a different animal as opposed to major individual donors or private foundations or even rank and file givers. But what we did is we incorporated our marketing team into that conversation so that marketing team could create, this messaging around that partnership that would speak to each of our other departments and give them an opportunity to co-own a part of that partnership. So with major donors, it was, how can we share this information about our corporate partnership with major donors so that major donors will be more motivated to give either to that specific partnership or unrestricted, hopefully. With our rank and file, we would create monthly e-appeals or direct marketing appeals that would highlight success stories and testimonials out of that partnership and obviously highlight that corporate partner in doing so. And then certainly this is key too, even board development. We found that senior management wanted to become more involved in the partnership when we identified potential board candidates in the C-suite level of these partners that we could groom for positions for our NGO board. So it was really a holistic sort of interactive way for us to engage our whole teams and create that culture of philanthropy and success for that partnership.
Mike, may I just absolutely agree, Robert. May I just basically cut to the chase here? NGOs may have been created in the very non-governmental, not to say non-corporate organization mindset. And there is sometimes an us against them feeling, and we're just gonna have to get over this. I'm yet to see, there are very few corporates which are pure evil. There are some. But as long as we are guided by a clear, transparent, ethical guideline with a due diligence test, with a risk management in case the association something happens, we need to work with each other. Whether we like it or not, we will encounter these organizations in the field. When you work in Northern Nigeria, you will work in the same area as you do with some of the worst companies in the world, oil companies, for example, or security companies. So we may as well at least scope them out. And if we can get them on the better side, our impact will be leveraged a lot more, and we might even get some funding out of it.
Great, thank you. As I go to some of the questions now, there's a particular strand here which is really about getting a foot in the door. Sort of how, what tips have you got for identifying high-value individuals or corporations, and how do you develop that relationship? It's sort of, particularly in a sort of competitive environment where there are probably other organisations who are also identifying those. How do you create a sort of unique value to your proposition, if that's possible?
I'd love to hear Robert's answer on this one as well, but if I may, I appreciate that not everybody is UNICEF, not everybody is quite as large, but as a small organization, you may be far more innovative, far more close to the ground than the bigger ones, far less bureaucratic. So immediately you have a value there. My short answer, Mike, would be, let's do the first 2 slides. Let's gain the consensus internally. Let's get over any internal resistance. And let's do a structured, possibly in retreat manner, as you put it, Robert. I think that's a good idea, taking them out of the work mode. A structured value proposition where we value the ideal philanthropic partner and what we value our services at, i.e. minimum services and or donations that we would accept. And once that is identified, you have a much better idea of who to actually approach to get where you want to get that foot in the door. Which club. You're not going to be suitable for everybody. You're not going to be suitable for the world. I mean, that would be preposterous. But let's identify which door we want to get our foot into, and then it becomes clearer how we want to walk through that as well.
And I would add to that, regardless of the size of your organization, I think it's terribly important to do a relationship mapping exercise at the outset of your project, meaning that you could bring together a few of your staff members, but make sure it includes board members as well. If you have a board, a working board, to do a screening exercise around who they know, what their relationships are, because you'll be surprised at how many individuals that may be on your own team or that are on your board that have a relationship, maybe a second degree or third degree relationship with that partner that you're trying to reach out to. So again, relationship science is an online tool that's great because they show the relationship between individuals, and some of that service is free, but I think everyone should be able to do it internally as one of the first steps to partnership development.
Yeah.
It reminds me slightly of sort of job interviews where if you're a candidate, you've got to show interest. You've got to have shown that you've done research into the employer that's interviewing you. You've got to show why you want to be employed by them and what value you can bring to it. It's somehow very similar to that.
It basically is like that. But what I hear a lot is when organizations contact my colleagues or me, when they say, look, I really would like to get a foot in the door, I really would like to partner with an organization, they're sort of jumping the gun. It's like they haven't actually thought about what sort of partnership, what value they provide, what value they want from it, and then apply. So it's a bit like a scattergun and a sharpshooter approach. I would always identify my target a lot more and then shooting 3, 4 times, 5 times, rather than just using as a very morbid example, I'm sorry, a scattergun approach and just send out masses of emails and say, would you like to partner with me? In fact, I would say the scattergun approach is sort of detrimental. I mean, you all, if you've been in charge of organizations, you all have these 10 people who send you their CV with "Dear Sir" every 3 months, and you're never going to look at that.
Hmm. So there's a question here from Amy. We sort of answered it, but Amy Sanders has asked, what tips do you have for making the first forays into prospect research? But in some ways, that's sort of identifying the connections between your organisation and the prospects, and what value you can bring and what value they can give to you. It's making sure you're clear on that, isn't it? I suspect.
Yeah, these first 2 slides again, just be very clear on what value you provide, and then once you got this value identified, communicate it in the first 2 or 3 lines to that prospect, and the likelihoods of a response then probably increases from close to 0 to at least 50%.
Great.
And I would add to Mike's and Chris's comments or analogy to having an interview, having someone interviewing with a company. One of the things I used to do and encourage my teams to do is what I called informational interviews. And these were actually going out to prospective partners, not asking for their support, not asking anything for them, except we want to understand, again, how you do your business. There's an old adage in fundraising that says, if you want money, ask for advice. And these informational interviews allowed us to ask for advice, to draw in those potential partners, and then to create a partnership roadmap that ultimately led to successful partnerships for us. Those informational interviews are great tools to use for anybody to go out to do some of this development.
Right. So just picking that up, Robert, I've got a question here from Phil Malone saying, do you always have to target the CEO, chairman, founder, or are there other departments worth approaching directly? What would you advise?
Well, first of all, unless we had a direct relationship with the CEO or someone in the C-suite, we typically would not go to the top person first. We would find out, one, did we have any relationships through our board or staff or partners with anybody in that organization? Secondly, we would identify individuals within the marketing department, because typically was the marketing departments of these organizations that held what I call the philanthropic funds, because if you look at corporate fundraising, it's really about a quid pro quo. It's a shared value proposition, as they call it, where you have to create value for the organization just as they're creating value for you. Marketing is all about, enhancing and magnifying that value. So the marketing department is usually where we would head first, and we would bring in our case, we could leverage our global ambassadors to go in with us for these, what I would call initial meetings, even those informational interviews. The marketing departments are very savvy in these organizations. They spend millions of dollars marketing, their brand, but they also know that they have to co-brand with, again, organizations that are doing good in society to create that intangible goodwill for their brand with their customers, with their employees, and certainly with the general public.
Yeah. Just a couple of joint questions here, one which is based on speed of return. So how do you get the sense in which leaders, CEOs within NGOs expect tangible results within 6 to 12 months? How do you get buy-in? Again, how do you get buy-in internally to the idea that these things take a long time to mature and result in a trusted partnership? I mean, even bonds partnerships are fairly small scale, but some of those take we've seen results after 2 or 3 years of conversation. It's quite extraordinary. But how do you continue to make sure that the leadership in your organization still has faith in you as a partnership team?
If I may just say, a well-structured approach, a well-structured philanthropic partnership scheme should have a metric on it that says the rate of return and a funnel through which to go through. And the stages of partnership can range from casual conversation to needs prospecting to contracting stage to working together stage to finally to deepening stage. And you really want to move or shake a stage every 3-4 months, I would say. Maybe right now it's 6 months during COVID, but we want to have a status change one way or the other. In an organization of similar size to UNICEF that we work with, we've built this funnel, and we didn't build a metric in saying it needs to progress every 90 days or 120 days, but it needs to be it needs to change. It can go back, and it can only stay at the stage once. So there was a structure around it. And then within 3 months, it became pretty clear those that do not progress, that are just sticking at the first stage or that just stuck at some point, they need to drop out of the funnel. And if the funnel is empty, then it's pretty clear we need to do more prospecting. So I wouldn't want to put a blanket requirement on, but I would say on timeline when this becomes a real prospect, but I would say every 90 days, 100 days, a stage change should happen one way or the other way. And if that doesn't happen, then it's probably no longer a prospect.
And I would add to that, and I totally agree with everything Chris says, is, for me, it's about building trust. And the way you build trust is you're transparent and you have impeccable integrity, and you over communicate with your partner in that process. You'll find that even if you can't reach your goals, or those goals are slipping beyond those milestones, that your partner will be much more understanding if you've communicated along the way, we're having some issues here, or there's some environmental factors that is affecting our success there. Be open, be honest, over communicate, be transparent. That will, at the end of the day, give you a lot more opportunity to recalibrate and move out those milestones and deadlines if necessary.
Yep.
Just want to hear about internal skills. What sort of, if you're want to set up a partnership scheme internally, what sort of people and what sort of skills would you need? What kind of people are you looking for?
Robert, you hired lots of them. Would you like to answer this one?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a lot of it's job specific, but I'll say that one of the obviously the most important skills that you can have is that you like to work with people. You have to want to build relationships that matter to the organization, that you feel that you can manage well and that you can follow through with. And certainly, again, not everyone has that skill set. Some people, you know, like to do other things. But I always, in my interview process, I would ask them, you know, how well do you like to work with people? I mean, give me an example of a relationship that's counted for in organizations that you've worked for that led to, you know, a change, a positive change in the way that that organization was achieving its goals or missions. And then also I would just say that, you know, they say a career counselor once told me that a good hire is 80% chemistry and 20% skills.
Robert?
Yeah, as the team. Yes. Can you hear me now?
You're breaking off there. It's your generator running out.
Yeah. I think my battery's running down. So
It's breaking up slightly, Robert.
So we clearly, these cross-continental connections don't seem to be working always.
Can I think we need to finish on the hour. So I just want to ask one final question, really, which was, I mean, we talked a lot about understanding your value, the confidence that the NGO needs to have in what it can offer. And we've also talked about the idea that when it's not working, you need to walk away, which is a very, you know, we're talking about so much kind of, there's so many questions around funding for NGOs at the moment. Walking away is a really big, would be a really big thing. You have to be confident and bold about what you're doing. What would be the critical factors that would, you know, determine an NGO to walk away from a partnership? Why would you do that? And in particular, you talked a bit about, Robert, about, you know, a philanthropist, a partner will want a condition of their own that they will bring to the partnership. What, you know, when do you walk away, or when is the condition imposed by the partner just a step too far? How do you think about those things and decide what to do?
Just in case Robert's connection isn't back yet, ultimately I would always walk away when you are no longer talking on an eye-to-eye level. You are not the junior partner in this relationship, regardless of size. Your mission matters. And if they engage with you and stop engaging, then I would just openly ask the question, what happens on your side? Did you change your values? Did you change your prospect at this one? Or is it a reason, can we make it easier to partner with us? And or if they are trying to convert the agreement, even during the MOU stage or previous to that, then I would confidently raise up my contentions to them and saying, sorry, this is not how we work. It will earn you the respect. And it's just not worth your time to be part of conversations that are not founded on mutual respect. What I would say, though, is that we do see many corporate, in particular, relationships being frustrated because the NGO doesn't work fast enough. I don't know if that is always the case. I've certainly seen examples for both, but we have had a few dialogues breaking down before agreement stage, and even shortly after, simply because, you know, major events were unplanned and emails were not responded to within days. So that is where I would say, do we have the ability to keep the dialogue going? The good measure of things is here, are you able to respond to that email or follow up with a phone call within 24 hours of receiving it? That includes the weekend.
Yeah. Can you hear me now, Chris?
Yes, yes.
So I would just add to that. I mean, again, superb advice. Agree with everything. You know, some of this will come out in the prospect research. You have to do your homework. You have to find out, is there anything in that corporations or individuals or institutions, past or present, that could be what I call a PR nightmare for your organization. There's a reputational risk that you take when you partner with anybody. And I think you just have to go through the due diligence of doing your homework so that you don't have to say no when you identify something that sort of comes out of the woodwork in the conversation, you know, 3 months in. Do your homework, make sure that, again, there's not a reputational risk potential here, and then move forward.
Great, thanks so much, Robert. I think there we must bring it to a close. And thanks again, Chris and MZN, but also great to have Robert on the session this time. Hope to see you again sometime, Robert. And thanks also for everybody staying on so long and staying for the questions as well. I hope you found that useful. We'll be doing more with MZN and Chris in the next few weeks. And look forward to your suggestions for webinars or any other content that you might want from Bond. So we'll send out the slides. And if you've got any other thoughts or comments to make about the webinar, please let us know. Fill in the evaluation form as well. That would be fantastic. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, everybody.
Mike. Bye. Thank you, Chris.